Shalom, everyone.
Very quickly, just want to thank Peter for taking the tour around. He has your site for his brother Paul on Monday. Thanks, Peter.
May his memory be a blessing.
I want to start with a story from Masechet Eruvin. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania said, "In my whole life, no one ever got the best of me in verbal sparring, except for one woman who ran it in, and a little boy and a little girl." So what's this? They tell the story about the woman who ran it in, but that's not the story I want to talk about. So what's the story about the little girl? Once, as I was walking down a road, I noticed a path through a field, and I walked along it. The little girl said to me, "Rabbi, isn't this a private field? Aren't you trampling on somebody's crops, presumably?" "No, it's a trodden path, like people have clearly walked here before." And then she said, "Just because people have walked here before doesn't mean it's not a private path." And what's the story with the little boy? Once I was walking down the road, and I saw a little boy sitting by a fork in the road, and I asked him which is the road to take to the town. He said, "This way is short but long. This way is long but short." So I went down the short but long way. When I approached the town, I discovered that it was surrounded with gardens and orchards that blocked my access. I turned back and had to go all the way around to get to the gate, but on my way I passed the boy and I said, "Didn't you tell me this was a short way?" And he said, "Didn't I also tell you that that was long?" It's so valuable having kids in our lives. One of the reasons is because they just think of things in such a different way. And the way that they view scenarios, and the way, actually I'm just going to talk directly to the kids, the way that you view things, and when I learn with you, it's like a joy to be bested in that way. Because you just come up with answers and questions that I never would have thought of. I want to tell two more little pieces of teaching about children learning and the value of them in our lives. And then I'll connect it to the parsha, and then I'll get out of the way. Okay. So, incidentally, in the Masechet Eruvin, the next story right after that is about Bruria, who's the wife of Rabbi Meir and a famous wise woman. She goes into Beit Midrash, and she sees a student learning, but quietly to himself. She kicks him. She says, "Don't you know that the verse says, Arucha bakol ushmura? If you say your Torah out loud, if you put yourself into it, then it'll be preserved. Then you'll remember it." And then there's a bunch of stories about people who only learned quietly and not out loud, and they forgot it all. And there's a specific way that kids have of being loud that is really valued in our tradition, even though it's sometimes really loud. So there's a story that appears in a couple different places, but I'm reading this from Eicha Rabbah. Okay. There were no philosophers, like no leaders of, that's the way they talk about outside wisdom, like these two people, like Bilam and sorry, I have to find the source. And Avnimus the Weaver. So there's this famous wise person named Avnimus the Weaver. And all these people came to Avnimus the Weaver, and they wanted to beat the Jews in some way, I guess best them in some way. "Are we successfully able to challenge this nation?" He said to them, "Go and visit their synagogues. If children are reciting aloud, you will be unable to overcome them, but if not, you will be able to overcome them. For this is what their father promised them when he said to them, 'The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau.'" When the voice of Jacob is out loud, and the word it uses is mitzaf tefin, which means chirping. So when kids in shul are chirping and being their loud, chirpy selves, then the Jewish people is strong. And when kids are not chirping and being their loud, chirpy selves, which I guess is if they're silenced, then the Jewish people is not strong. And one last story about that. Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav said, this is from Masechet Shabbat, there's this verse, Al tigu b'mshichai unvinvi'ai al terehu. Don't touch my anointed ones, my Mashiachs, my leaders of the next world, and my prophets, do not do any harm to them. Who are these? Who are my Mashiachs? These are the school children. This is Tinokot Shel Beit Rabban. Do not harm my prophets. These are Torah scholars and Torah teachers. Rish Lakish said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, the world only exists, Ein ha'olam yitkayem, ela bishvil hevel tinokot shel Beit Rabban, because of the out-breath, the exhaling of students in school. And again, this is the value of kids being loud. The world only exists because kids are allowed to express. So I want to say to the kids that we really value the way that you look at things and the way that you change how we see things and the way that you're going to steer us in the future. And this teaching compares them to the Mashiach, to the Messiah who will lead the next world, because you see things that we don't see. And I just want to make a quick tie to the Parsha. When addressing judges, it says, don't have a miscarriage of justice, lo tasu avo b'mishpat, v'lo tisa pnei dal, v'lo tedar pnei gadol. All right, so don't show favor to a poor person, and don't show favor to a rich person. Here it says gadol, a big person, a macher, a big person in the community. I think it's obvious why we'd have to tell judges, don't take bribes and don't show favor to somebody who's important in the community. But why would we have to tell judges, don't favor a poor person? Because the judge might say, oh, this person is rich. If I side with them in their side of the case, then they'll be able to help me out later. Or maybe they'll get me reelected. Or maybe if I don't side with them, they'll punish me in the community somehow. But what will they say about the poor person? Well, this person is poor, and so they need my help, which is sometimes true, but that's not necessarily going to get you to the right answer. And the only thing that the judge's job is to look at the truth and get to the right answer. Okay, I want to compare this to one other thing. So it says, lo tisa pnei dal, don't lift up the side of the poor person. Lo tedar pnei gadol, don't show honor to the side of the big person. Okay, and it uses the same phrase, lo tedar pnei zakein. It says, v'hadarta pnei zakein. This is when it's saying that you should show deference to people who are older than you. Mipnei seva takum v'hadarta pnei zakein. So rise in front of the aged and show honor, using that exact same word, to the face of somebody who is older than you and more wise than you. So it's clearly making a connection between these two. So I'll say, lo tetar pnei gadol. This is to the kids. Don't assume just because an adult says something or a big person says something that they're right. Your only job is to get to the truth. V'lo tisa pnei dal. But don't assume just because you're small that you're right. Your only job is to get to the truth. Sometimes people who are bigger than you know better. A lot of times they don't. But the reason they don't is not because they're bigger or because you're smaller. You might have a different perspective on the truth, and that's your job to speak it out loud, and they might. Shabbat Shalom.